Hello.
Hello. Hey.
Okay, good evening. My name is William Otworth, and I'm by no means an expert on politics, but for what it's worth, I would like you to keep an open mind tonight. I'm going to inform you of why the Electoral College is a good thing for our nation as a whole. The Electoral College was created in 1787 by the framers of the Constitution of the United States of America. Some framers wanted a system fully dependent on popular vote, and some wanted a system where congressmen made the decisions without any input from the public at all. The EC falls somewhere in the mix of those two. The same problems that the framers were concerned about in 1787 still exist today. They were concerned that state loyalties, 13 at the time, would trump the interests of the nation as a whole. So multiply that concern by about 4 and you have our nation today. If popular vote had been enacted then, state representatives would have likely to have been running and won their respective states. Therefore, the largest state population would elect the president. You would have so many candidates that not all of them would have a good idea of the needs and wants of the nation as a whole. They were also concerned about the possibility of people wanting recounts, which would have been a logistical nightmare in that time period. According to Brianna Noble of Newsmax.com, the EC protects minority interests. It brings together the cohesiveness of the country by requiring candidates to campaign in rural areas and cities, big cities and small cities. And that's what I'm going to talk about first today. The Electoral College making it important to campaign in all 50 states, no matter big or small, Wyoming or New York City. USElectionatlas.org gives us the pros and cons of the EC, one of the major ones being minority representation. It's important to campaign throughout the United States, even though some cities and states are lacking, such as Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, Montana, but it's still important for them to make it out there because those 3 or 4 EC votes are really important. They can't just campaign in LA, New York City, San Francisco, Austin, Dallas, Atlanta, and expect to win the election. They might win those big states, but that doesn't account for 270 electoral votes. So the EC gives farmers in these rural areas, such as the Midwest and Western states, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that would be overlooked if they didn't have the Electoral College. So Leon Friedman, professor at Hofstra Law University, talked a lot about that in his writing. The EC also places an importance on the two-party system. Within the two-party system, campaigners need to take into consideration the needs of the many and not just the few. Oftentimes, independent party reps run on narrow platforms, neglecting major topics of national interest. And now I'm going to go into a little bit more depth of the stability of the two-party system and why it's good for the country. The existence of an overarching two-party system makes it virtually impossible for a third party to win an election, which initially you might think is bad, but it isn't necessarily a bad thing. So basically what will happen is people that want to elect a third-party representative will realize that they don't really have a chance of winning the election. So what will happen is Democrats and Republicans will try to absorb the thoughts of the platform that the third-party representative is running for in order to gain the votes of the third-party people that are going to vote in the election. It also enforces political coalitions within parties. An example of that is after the primary when Bernie lost, Hillary had to adopt a lot of his socialist kind of outlooks in order to win the hearts of his electors. If popular vote were enacted, then third parties would run on unstable, radical platforms targeting small populations. An example of this would be if the mayor of Miami wanted to run on the premises that when Cubans immigrate into our country, the second they hit the sand, they are U.S. citizens. So why is popular vote bad? Richard Posner of Slate.com talks about the certainty of outcome in an election. Basically what that states is that ahead of time, people vote for the Electoral College representatives in order to vote for what they believe in. If everything came down to popular election, if something was within 1% of the vote, you would likely have a recount. The two-party system would still be in control and would only have to campaign in large cities, which we also talked about. You will see instances of people running on narrow platforms to get a vote of a specific purpose, which we talked about in the Miami example. Proponents of popular vote claim faithless electors are a worry as well. Throughout history, we've had 12 instances of faithless electors, but not a single one of them has had any outcome on the final result of a single election. So in conclusion, why fix something that isn't broken? We've been doing this for 229 years. Throughout time, you've had these faithless electors, you've had recounts, you've had arguments, but over time we've had amendments. And with the change in our culture over the past 200 years, we'll get things right eventually. So the EC gives a voice to all people around the nation, from stockbrokers to farmers, actors to military members. It's good for our nation as a whole, rural communities to large cities. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.